Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be going over an aspect of Call of Cthulhu that I think a lot of you probably already know about, but we're going to get a little bit deeper into it and go over what the exact definitions of two often used terms in Call of Cthulhu are. Now, these terms are phobias and manias, which are both, derived from insanity in Call of Cthulhu. And you'll notice that on the Call of Cthulhu character sheet, there is a space for phobias and manias. So before I start, I just want to, put a little disclaimer here. As it says in the Call of Cthulhu Keeper rulebook, in no way are these descriptions of madness in this game supposed to be a accurate representation of real world mental disability or anything like that. This is only in the game. So let's just get right into it. First of all, a phobia is the fear of something. Can be anything. And so one problem that I have with the Call of Cthulhu Keeper book phobia rules or whatever, no, they're not really the rules, just their suggested phobias, is that they write a bunch of really long names and stuff. I don't think that when you inflict a phobia or a mania on a player, you don't want to say, all right, you now have arachnophobia. And that one's fairly common, but some of these are not, I certainly do not recommend rolling on the table or anything. So keeper advice, if an investigator goes insane and you're going to give them a phobia or a mania, make it relevant to the situation. Do not just roll and pick a random thing. Maybe once in a while you can do that, Obviously, all rules are just suggestions, especially in this type of game. But for phobias and manias, they're a million times more scary, as I go over in my video on role-playing sanity. I guess I'll put it over here. Yeah, right up there. So go watch that if you haven't already. But as I say in that video, you need motivation behind everything, especially for your insanity. It can't be random. It can't be sporadic. There needs to be some type of motivation. Now, not everyone needs to know the motivation, but you as the keeper, and if the player is in like for example, if a room starts closing in on them, I'm pretty sure claustrophobia or a fear of being closed in is much more appropriate than you rolling and finding out that the person has arachnophobia. Like, there were no spiders in the room. Why would they have arachnophobia now? Does that make sense? That's just a general rule. Anyway, so according to the Keeper Rulebook, a phobia, when exposed to the source of their phobia, or even just thinking about it. All right, so right off the bat, a phobia is way more than a general fear. Do not put it on the level of just being scared of the dark. Like, if you have a phobia, I don't know what it would be called, but if you have a phobia of the dark, darkophobia, you would be, let's see what they say you would be. Within the character's symptoms can develop rapidly. So this is not always. This is a generalization. Within seconds, palpitations, trembling, choking, and an uncontrollable anxiety could appear. The character feels that they must do everything possible to avoid the situation at all costs, right? So, as a player, now here's the thing about phobias and manias is that they are less, at least in my games. I don't know if these are, I'm pretty sure these are the exact rules, but if they're not, this is how I use them. They are not as potent unless the player is actually insane or in a bout of madness. So if your player character is still, took some sanity and now has a phobia, but then, they've recovered sanity and they're no longer in indefinite madness or anything like that, that would mean that, or temporary madness, whatever. That would mean that the investigator, if they had arachnophobia and they came into contact with spiders, they would likely freak out. But I think that it would be far less than if, here's a little bit of a metaphor. It's not a very good one, but whatever. If a person has their arm in a box. Their arm is in a box. They can't take their arm out, right? And if they're not insane and they have arachnophobia and they feel a spider inside the box crawling on their hand, right? They're going to probably try to do everything they can to get away from the spider, right? If the player was insane, they would likely cut into their body and to get away from the spider. Does that make more sense? So it's less extreme when they're not actually insane. Moving along. So when giving a character a phobia, and you don't want investigators to all have phobias, and because the game should never feel like a video game. You don't want phobias to feel like a status effect or something common. Maybe one or two of your players could have a phobia. Maybe one or two have a mania. You got to mix it up, and you have to make it unique to each player. You should not have anything feeling stale in any given scenario. Maybe in another scenario you can recycle content, but that's only if you're playing with new people. So when you give them a phobia, you need to think, as a keeper, you need to think about what it is that you're giving them. Make sure that you understand that this is going to be big, and you need to plan it out, plan everything out, or at least plan out encounters with said thing. And notice that when a character goes into a bout of madness and they gain a phobia, according to the rules, what might happen is that when they go into the bout of madness, they immediately hallucinate the subject of their phobia all around them. I would not use that every time. Actually, you know what? I probably would. Just don't call it a hallucination to the player. Don't let them know that that's what that's supposed to be. Just, because I like to keep things interesting and new, so I wouldn't call it a hallucination. You have to make sure that the thing makes its entrance in different ways. Anyway, moving on to manias. Now, mania is basically the opposite of a phobia, and this calls it a character. A character with a mania will have a fairly constant, euphoric, or possibly irritable mood. Symptoms include general increase in activity, increased self-esteem to the point of delusion, decreased need for sleep, easily distracted, willingness for dangerous or imprudent activities, such as reckless driving, hallucinations, delusions, and bizarre behavior. And that is all on top of... one second, let me make sure of this. That is all on top of the main idea of a mania. So those are additional symptoms. Now, an actual mania it results in an obsession or compulsion with its subject. For example, compulsion for washing oneself. Compulsion for high places, which would be the opposite of a fear of heights, right? So, and again, I would not roll on this table. I would come up with it to make it, fit with the story. So when you give a character a mania, again, it's similar to a phobia. So I'm going to go over it, I'm not going to give all those keeper tips because they apply to both phobias and manias. So when you give a character a mania, they are going to be compulsively doing whatever it is. And again, it's less intense unless they're mad. And if they're mad, then it's way more intense. One great example of a obsession or compulsion with an object or subject, compulsion for washing oneself, specifically for washing your hands, it might be Macbeth, I think? I think it's Macbeth. I could be wrong, though. One of the Shakespeare plays that I've read where they kill the king, and the wife helps the husband do it. They both do it together. And then the wife keeps waking up in the middle of the night and she's washing her hands, right? Because her hands were bloody. And then when they got home, she washed her hands and her husband's hands, saying, "Look, it just washes right away. Everything's fine now." And then she keeps waking up in the middle of the night, walking around, sleepwalking, rubbing her hands together as if she's washing them. That's a perfect example of a mania. And I highly recommend you read that story. I think it's Macbeth. I'm almost positive it's Macbeth. I think the witch. It starts with witches, 3 witches telling him that he could become king, and so then he kills the king and ruins his life in the process. And he does it because his wife kind of forces him to. Although obviously he does it too, so it's not like they're in on it together. And I'm not going to give away the ending, but as with a lot of Shakespearean tragedies, it does not end well. That's actually a really good scary story. One of Shakespeare's scariest, or most of a ghost story that he's ever done. It reminds me of like something Edgar Allan Poe would do. Okay, so let's see. Another thing, compulsions. I don't know exactly why this is a little bit confusing for anyone reading the Keeper's Manual, in that there's 4 sections, one for a phobia, then one for manias, then one for compulsion and amnesia. Let me show it to you. So you've got all of those, right? Now, a compulsion and a mania are technically the same thing, according to the description in this book. So I don't know if maybe they copied and pasted this little thing from a previous edition or something like that. I don't know. I know that they did that with some of this book and a lot of the Investigator Handbook. But that's besides the point. I'm still going to go over it. I'm going to go over compulsion and amnesia, just because. Compulsions tend to be ritual actions performed to affect the future, possibly to prevent some vague notion of impending doom. This is a little more specific. Though the character may agree the actions are senseless, the need to perform them is overpowering. Even in times of great stress, the character may ignore his or her survival in order to perform the ritual. And amnesia is an inability to recall important personal information brought on by a desire to avoid unpleasant memories. That right there is super important. I almost want to do a whole nother video on it, but I'm going to go over it now. So, I might change the name of this video to be like the different types of madness. I don't know. Anyway, so amnesia, that right there, that one sentence is so powerful. An inability to recall important personal information. This is how the horror sets in when you're playing with your players, right? So, you always got to make it ironic, right? From the greatest of horrors, irony is seldom absent. H.P. Lovecraft said that. Now, you look at this. So you start with an inability to recall important personal information, or any information, any memory, right? An inability to recall it. And it's important. They need to know it. The player, for whatever reason, needs to remember this. However, their brain has blocked it off from them. Why? This is where it's ironic. It's brought on by a desire to avoid unpleasant memories. And that right there is the motivation you need. And that's what I talk about in my sanity video, and a lot in my other videos, is that you need to have motivation behind everything. Everything needs purpose to build a compelling story. So many movies have these plot holes, right? Because characters don't have any motivation for doing things that they're doing. They're doing it because, so that there's a movie? Okay, well, I think that having motivations behind things will definitely make your story more compelling, more interesting, and more fun for you and your players as you build it. Anyway, let me finish this. The character may just forget the bad experience that caused the amnesia, or they could forget major chunks of time, or even everything about themselves. I do not recommend the everything about themselves, except when in dire situations or if it's essential to the scenario. Never do that randomly. That's very big and shocking, and you want to draw that out and milk that for all it's worth, if you ever use it. The keeper may choose to reset Cthulhu Mythos to 0, maximum sanity to 99, while the amnesia holds sway. The horror returns when the character's memories do, or when they experience a similarly, what the heck? Horrific situation. Okay. And that's another thing, is that you can bring all the horror flooding back to them when they experience a similar situation. And then it's also interesting to note that that can be so traumatic but also super important. Again, the irony, only it's reversed this time because they have a similar situation, but it unlocks the memory, and now they'd have the key to getting out of whatever situation they're in. They remember what their mentor did to defeat the cult, but how their mentor in the process lost their life, right? So they remember as a child seeing their mother holding back these high cultists, kidnapped the child and their mother, and they went to sacrifice the mother to they went to sacrifice the child to bring a creature into existence. Then they were going to do the mother, but the mother sacrifices herself first. But this act of love somehow subverts the magic because it's not done in malice and does not feed the creature, which makes it so that it doesn't work. But now the child is scarred, and you would have to. This could be. You need so much more to add to this. Why are the cultists dead? They have to be defeated somehow, or the child has to get away somehow. But then the child forgets it, right? They push it out of their mind, or when it happens, they're so traumatized that their brain just automatically removes the memory. Then in a similar situation later, they realize what they have to do. So they've got the key, so it's a negative. They're in a similar situation. Positive, they've got the key. And then you bring them down into the depths of despair as they realize the key is not helpful at all. Because now they know how to defeat them is to kill themselves, sacrificing to a demon. Not very good options there. But yeah, there you have it. Those are Phobias and Manias, and a little bit on amnesia as well, just because. So just some general information about different types of insanity. If you are new here to this channel, I am Deathstroke9, also known as Daniel Profeta. I've been a Call of Cthulhu keeper for a while now, and it's really fun. Please subscribe to my channel, like this video if you haven't already, and check out some of my other content. I have a lot now. And before I wrap up, I want to thank you guys and girls, everyone who's out there who has been watching my channel, because we have hit multiple milestones in the past day. Or past couple of days. All right, so let me just tally them off, because they're not my achievements, right? Because I can't do any of this without support, without you guys, seeing that there's demand for what it is that I'm offering, right? So this is our achievements, because I consider us to be a collective intelligence. I'm the voice of the Legion, and you guys are the Legion, right? Well, technically, Professor Death is more the voice of the Legion. I'm just kind of his toady, but, whatever. I try. So yeah, here are the stats. We've passed 200 subscribers. Awesome. I just uploaded this, I think, is my 101st video, so I just uploaded my 100th video. Awesome. And we passed 10,000 views, incredible, and 1,000 hours of watch time. I'm very excited about that. So thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. And bleed out that subscribe button. Have a great day. Deathstroke9 out.